All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Design, Build, Hunt podcast, which is presented by Whitetail Partners. And today, I have a very special guest. This might be one of the episodes that I am most excited for because I've got one of my very own clients here on the line with me, Mr. Emerson Chew. Emerson, what's going on this morning?
Hey, Josh, how are you today, brother?
Doing very well. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you you taking the time for this. Why don't we kick things off, man? Just tell me a little bit about you and where you're located, because we've talked with a client from Minnesota. We've talked with Wisconsin clients. We have not talked to anybody where you're at. The terrain might be a little bit different down your way.
Yeah, Emerson Chew. I'm from Southwest Georgia. It's about 30 minutes north of Tallahassee. Knowing a lot of people think Georgia, they think Atlanta, but keep going down a little bit further south, about 4 hours south of Atlanta. Been living down here pretty much my whole life. Lived in a few other places, but came back, and Thomas County, Mitchell County are my home. That's where the property is located, up in Mitchell County.
Yeah, so pretty far south. I mean, you're going to be doing weird things like planting food plots in October, potentially late October, some years, depending on the rain that we're getting.
Yep, absolutely. I think I remember when you and I met in April, it was already greened up. It was a jungle out there for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, it was an absolute jungle. And I forget, the day we were out there was pretty nice, but it was still hot.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It was like
Yeah.
mid-April, I think, and we were cooking. So
Yeah, it was pretty bad. So, but hey, we capped things off with lunch and some sweet tea, and that was a good. Yeah, that's what I want people to think about when they think of Georgia is good food, sweet tea, maybe even the heat, but don't think about Atlanta.
yeah,
Just got
that's
to
what
find out where you.
you've got to wait for it, right? You got to get in the sweat, get put in the pain, and then you get your
Oh yeah,
sweet tea and fried chicken. So
that's right. Then that's the rest on the backside of it. But yeah, so
exactly.
I'm up here. I'm located just outside of Atlanta by about 40 minutes, and I got to tell you, I know people think about Atlanta when they think of Georgia, but they shouldn't, because I do not enjoy driving through that place. It
Yeah,
took me
yeah.
3 hours. So it was my wife's birthday. It took me 3 hours to get home coming through Atlanta the other day. It just about cost me missing a birthday dinner, which
Yeah,
I'm not sure how your wife would feel about that, but mine would
yeah.
not be real pleased.
Tough, tough, tough. Yeah, we plan our trips if we're heading north on how we're going to get through or around Atlanta. So yeah, I feel you. I definitely feel
Right,
you.
right. Well, Emerson, let's kick things off, man. I want to hear a little bit about how you got into hunting. Your story's a little bit different than maybe some of us who are consultants, and different than some of the guys that we've had on so far. So, how did you get into whitetail hunting?
Yeah. So my story is probably a little bit unique, right? Been listening to your podcast, listened to a lot of podcasts over the years, and most people that come on these shows are fairly experienced hunters. I'm not, right? I am pretty out of the ordinary, especially for Southwest Georgia. I've only been hunting now a couple years, right? Grew up in Southwest Georgia and did some, I guess you call it casual hunting with just buddies and stuff in high school. I had to borrow their equipment and just kind of go with them just as something to do, right? Some dove shoots, a little bit of whitetail hunting, but nothing real serious. Well, we purchased this property about 17 years ago. Never really had done anything much with it. Well, like last season, I actually said to myself, "Well, let's try this thing out." Right? You live down here. You know there's deer out there. Why don't you try something different? Right? I kind of equate it to my midlife crisis of sorts. Some people go out and buy Corvettes. I started deer hunting, so I'm a little bit different, right? Very new, very novice hunter. So combining the hunting with this habitat management has been a cool new learning experience for me. So having a blast so far, and I think it puts me in a decent. It gives me a good perspective, right? I'm not coming in with kind of preconceived ideas on what I think everything should be like, or I don't have a 30-year history on I've been doing things this way, right? I'm kind of coming into it as is open minded and fresh and learning new ideas and trying to learn from whoever I can get advice from.
Right. And I gotta say, I love working with all kinds of different clients. And I've worked with clients who just bought their property, and I've worked with clients who've had their property and have been hunting it for 30 plus years. So,
Mhm.
each one, there's something cool about it. But I think working with a new hunter is just phenomenal because there's so much there that I feel like I can deliver, as far as just hunting setups and from A to Z, so it's
Yeah.
just a great experience. And you made the jump from like deer hunter to habitat manager really, really quickly. Like I think of guys who've been hunting, they're like, well, I've been hunting since I was a kid, then I bought a piece of property once I could afford it, a little bit older. And now I'm getting into the habitat management piece. I mean, you're neck deep in habitat management at this point, and you've
Yeah,
only been hunting for how long?
about a year, if that, right? No, I mean, gosh, not even half a year, right? Did a little bit, just some burns and stuff like that, but nothing major. So, and I wouldn't go so far as saying habitat manager. I don't know what the other word would be. I am, I am messing with my property and trying to tune it up. Maybe in a few years you can call me a habitat manager, but I think you opened my eyes a lot. I think when you look through things through a certain lens, you see weeds. Right, we're used to seeing these are weeds. Right, we need to get rid of all this. Working with you, right, you kind of showed me that this is food, right? There is food everywhere out here, and identifying what is food and actually what is a invasive species, that really kind of opened something up, or just it resonated with me, right? Let's explore, let's figure this out, right? There are 40 acres to explore and figure out how can we manipulate this, how can we use this to our benefit. It gave me a whole new perspective, and an energy, right? I think at first I was overwhelmed, but now it's more of like, how do I figure this out, right? And dive into it and try to learn and absorb everything I can. And I think again, you set that initial stage when you showed, or were relaying to me how much of this is actual food and that we can work with this, right? This is not just weeds. These are very important things that will attract not only deer but other type of wildlife. So that really resonated with me, and I found it, is one of these interesting, pleasant, great side effects is not only the deer hunting aspect, but managing that habitat and promoting maybe a good diversity of species out there.
Yeah. I one of my favorite things about you, I've got to say, is, when we first started talking, it was like, hey, you know, you're a busy guy, you got a job, you got a young family, like there's a lot going on, right? And it was kind of like, hey, we're going to prioritize because of my stage in life. I just don't feel like I've got the time to devote to a lot of this stuff. So we're going in, we know we've got time constraints as a
Hmm.
priority, in setting up a property, which great. We want to be realistic about what we have available to us. Um, but you very quickly went from that to like making the time. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, it's just prioritizing a little bit and figuring out little slots where I can get out there and do some work. My spouse has been great, allowing me to get up there. And I think what I've kind of learned is that you can do little things, right, that can make a pretty significant impact. I live about 30 minutes south, maybe 40 minutes south, to get to the property. And I think what I kind of learned is compartmentalize things. Let's focus on this today. Let's just do a little bit of this today. It's 100 degrees out, so let's just do this today.
yeah,
And trying to like pop in and out kind of where I can. I happen to have a very flexible job. I work from home, so maybe I can pop up in the morning and then make that time up in the evening. So yeah, prioritization of my time and picking out chunks at work, with my family, has definitely been, not challenging, but it's just another interesting aspect
right,
of it.
right. Yeah, no, that's been awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about your property. So I'm going to do things a little bit different than we've done on some of the other episodes where we've had, client properties up, or we've discussed with clients about their property. So I've got your property up here. Can you see that?
Yep, yep, I got you for
So
sure.
why don't you tell me about the property? And, another unique thing about yours is you've also got access to the property behind, although it's not yours, but you do
Hmm.
have access to it. So discuss, kind of share with me this property, when it was purchased, kind of what had been done to it, and then we'll talk a little bit about the design. But anybody coming from the South, this is a pretty typical Southwest Georgia property.
Mhm.
Um, it's fairly common for what you're going to find down there. So give me kind of your take.
Yep, sure. My father and I bought the property in 2007. As you can probably tell from the aerial, that ag field over to the east, right? It was once they were all one contiguous lot. It was 60 acres. We purchased 40 acres from the adjoining landowner. Yeah, it was all ag, right? Open ag. We planted it in pines, right? At this point in 2007, didn't think that I would be hunting it that much. We wanted to plant pines to try to make some kind of investment in the property. So planted those in about 2008. Not quite 40 acres. I believe it's probably 26, 27 acres of just planted pines. Let that go, right? From 2007 on, was not very active in the property. We'd get some pine straw taken off of it. We get fire breaks done, but we're not managing it. We're just kind of letting it kind of ride on its own. The northern part of the property, we spent some time out there. You've probably picked up a few mosquito bites with me while we were out there.
A few.
Yeah, hardwood, water oak, live oak. There's a few nice oaks in there, very thick. Right, that's something on we'll probably talk about is privet. I think I dream of privet nowadays.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's you know, like I said, there's not. It kind of probably reminds you of a lot of other Southwest Georgia properties. Um, we have access, from 49er, from Mount Olive to the south. And then, we talk with another landowner to the north of us. Again, we come from a pretty small town, know a good bit of the people. That property had been sitting inactive for several years, and we managed to get rights for this year to hunt over there too. That aerial imagery is a little bit different now. It's been clear cut, so it's proved to be some pretty good bedding area. So we're excited about trying to hunt that in the fall as well.
Yeah, and so I don't have the most recent imagery here on Google Earth, but yeah, this is one big clear cut that has started to
Mhm.
grow back. When people think of a clear cut up
Yes.
north, I don't want them thinking like, oh, it's a clear cut, and it's going to be a couple of years before it's active again. No, this is active deer bedding.
Mhm. Yeah,
Crazy amount of bedding
there's
right
a
now.
lot of activity up in there. A lot of activity for sure.
Right. I would love to get a drone and fly it over. I would.
Yeah, there's probably a lot going on, and it's really grown up right now. It's very thick, right? But one of the nice things is there's been a lot of, I guess, heavy equipment compacted some of these trails, and those still have pretty much stayed walkable, right? So there is a lot of trails through there, a lot of corridors through there. If you get further in, you can start piecing your way through the property. So
Right.
yeah, it's been fun to explore that as well.
Right, and luckily, those trails that have been, packed down with heavy equipment just happen to funnel a
They
lot of
do.
deer movement right onto the back of your property because, this is so thick now, deer don't wanna just travel through it willy-nilly. They are
Hmm.
taking those heavy machine paths, and they just happen to all converge, like, right here at the back of your
Yep.
property.
Yep. Yep. We've noticed that. We noticed that um, last year as well. There seems to be a big communal scrape up there where all these kind of trails come together. So that's why we're trying to take advantage of some of that. Trying to take some of that advantage of some of that north to south movement for sure.
Right, right. One of the things I love about your property that is not typical of a Southwest Georgia property is all this access. You've got access from the north, obviously from the neighboring property.
Hmm.
You've got this entire road here, which is a dirt road that's not very busy, right?
Hmm.
Then
That's
you've got the
correct.
paved road here, which even the paved road isn't real
Not too
busy.
busy. Hmm.
And
Nope.
then you've actually got, depending on canine activity, access
Yeah. Yep.
access over to this side where you can use kind of the edge of the crop field.
Yep.
So
You're
you've
exactly
got
right. Yep.
so much property that you can get to and hunt efficiently without spooking the deer on your property. One of the main things that we are helping landowners with oftentimes is that access piece. You
Hmm.
have a ton of access options, and I'm going to pick on you here for just a second if you don't mind. But
Absolutely. Absolutely.
one of the things we changed very quickly was when you were hunting the property, you were parking, right about here. and
Mhm.
walking right down the core,
Oh,
right
yeah.
in the core of the property. And
Yep.
you were successful, you did kill a buck on the property, but
Mhm.
tell me about that story and, you know, kinda how things make a little more sense now with a new hunting strategy and how that played out with that buck.
Yeah, for sure, right, so, again, not having too much knowledge, right, had a stand set up kind of just in the middle of those pines. Um, I believe it was December 20th, December 22nd, something like that. Um, was getting ready for the holidays, knew, we'd have a lot of family coming in, things would start getting crowded, a lot of stuff going on, so I went out and just for an afternoon sit just to really just enjoy the weather. Beautiful day, kinda, um just enjoy sitting out there, right? Before the holidays really got kicked off, and I was about to leave. It was maybe 2:45 or 3, maybe a little bit later in the afternoon, and all of a sudden, yeah, he just stood up. Obviously bedding right there in those pines. He's about 60 yards away from my stand, and was able to take him. So it was fun. It was great, but it was nothing planned, right? I did not.
Right,
I would go in there and just sit, a lot of sitting, right? But I had no strategy in how I was hunting the property, and that's what I think you and I talked about a lot. Is with this now I have a strategy. I know when to go out there, how to access it. And I'm not just going to see kind of what happens, right? I am trying to go sit with the purpose and know that there probably is a good opportunity by going to sit in this stand and accessing it this way. So I think that was the big pivot for me, right? As you explaining to me, when you park here and you walk through the middle of this property, you're probably blowing out everything that was in there, right?
right.
So yeah, access and screening, right? And knowing when to access, when to not, just learning that information was changed a lot of how I look at the property for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I gotta say there's a lot of I'm on a lot of properties. I really am. But
mm,
this is one that makes me think to myself, like, this would be a property I would really wanna purchase. I would really want this to be my property because of your access, because of I mean, eh, as an adult onset hunter, there are worse places to be than Southwest Georgia because there are some really good deer,
yep.
down that way.
Yep, absolutely, and we've seen a lot, right? And where we're hoping that as the years go by, we'll continue to see bigger deer. Again, I stressed to you when we talked about our goals, right? And maybe getting a little bit off subject, but why I enjoyed working with you so much is you took some of my goals and incorporated them into this plan, right? We want to try to get bigger deer to possibly stay on the property or spend more time on the property, but we're really just providing good opportunities for us when we go out there, right? For my kids, I have an 8 and a 4-year-old, getting them out there, family members, right? Just to provide good opportunities for them to go out there and use the property as well, right? So again, that's what I enjoyed about the time with you, is you took those goals, and again, we would like to see bigger deer on the property, but that's not our main focus at this point.
Right.
It's to just increase opportunity, and when we go out there, have a good time and go out there with a purpose.
Right, and I think, when when you're thinking about taking kids, one of the things we always try to work for, uh, just seeing deer, just seeing target animals, that
Yep.
is a huge goal in and of itself in getting the family on board. I mean,
Yep.
even if you're just taking your wife or your kids or your cousin or whoever it is,
Hmm.
seeing deer is a really, really big deal. So I'm gonna pull up just real quickly what we did, and you guys were already doing a lot of really good stuff on this property. So you were already, um, you guys were already burning, but we did
Hmm.
make some tweaks there to burn schedules and that kind of thing. And you're a bit unique compared to some other clients that I have, in that your uncle's a forester. So I don't
Yeah.
have many folks who like have the uncle forester to like check in on my work. Um,
Yeah.
but he liked the new burn rotation suggested and thought that it would be
Hmm.
best for wildlife, and we came up with something that I think is a good balance between managing your pine timber well, but also, you know, taking deer and habitat into account.
Yep. Absolutely. Right. And I knew, right, just from living down here, that you want to burn, right, for the health of the trees, for the health of the habitat. but I was never putting two and two together. And he'd mentioned this to me before as well, that maybe we considered like checkerboarding it, right, and burning little small sections at different times. Maybe doing a warm season burn, right, and you reinforce that, right, that there are, by burning at different times of the year, you can promote different types of growth, right. You can maybe burn this not as often, right, for more bedding areas, but and you also suggested some reading to me, right, about how important it is and how much we can do with fire, right? One of
Mhm.
the best things you can do, the cheapest methods you can do to increase your habitat diversity is fire, right? And so that's what I'm really looking forward to the hunting season, but I'm also already thinking about March in the burn season, about how we can get out there and burn some of these areas and then see what happens right after that burn. Start
Right.
really paying attention. Again, before we would have burnt and I would have just walked through and whatever comes up. Now we can start identifying it. Oh, this would be productive, right? This is maybe not as productive, right? Seeing it through that again, that new lens, which I alluded to earlier.
Right. Right. And so, one of the things we did, knowing now that we've got all this exterior access that is just phenomenal, one of the
Hmm.
big things we did was set this area right here on the inside aside as bedding. It's going to be burned a little bit less often.
Hmm.
We're going to have fire breaks that cut all the way down. This will be managed more for bedding, and this part on the outside will be managed more for forage. So it's going to be burned a little bit more often,
Hmm.
and we're not going to let it get as woody in the understory as we are going to allow it to become in here, which is more cover priority, right? And so what that sets up is wonderful opportunities for you on the outside here, coming in just from this little blind or this stand T6, for instance. You're gonna
Yep.
have deer standing up out of their beds and working their way out. You've got a large ag field here, and one of the things we prioritize in our plans, especially here for southern deer hunting, that may be a little different than some guys in the Midwest, is we are designing oftentimes in the timber staging areas. So
Hmm.
this location right here is intended as a staging area before deer would head out to your food plots or head over, this other large ag kind of over in this direction too. And so, we're looking at, okay, how do we have staging? We've got bedding, bedding, bedding. Well, then we're going to do some TSI, forest stand improvement work right here. We're going to work on your oak trees because you do have a lot of oak trees of different kinds. We've got high quality browse all around in this area. We've got 3 different stand locations that kind of take advantage of that. So,
Hmm.
lots of opportunities on this property. Very, very excited about that. So, tell me about the process. Then you decided to reach out to Whitetail Partners. You had taken in some of the content already. Tell me about that process of working with Whitetail Partners leading up to and even during the on-site consultation.
Sure. Well, as a new hunter, right, and trying to figure out how to improve your land, right, the internet is a great resource, but the internet is also sometimes not so good as far as the amount of information that you get. Right, you're like, whoa, should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do, what should I do? And you get a kind of a dizzying array of things thrown at you. In that internet research, right, I came across y'all's website. It appealed to me. It seemed fairly straightforward, right? It seemed like y'all provide just good concrete options on what I should do. I contacted you, emailed you. I don't know if it was right at the end, maybe December, January. Exchanged a few emails back and forth. We had that initial kind of discovery call where you tried to gather, some of my goals and what we wanted. My father was a part of that call as well. From there, right, you sent over a proposal. We loved it. It spoke to us as to kind of what we wanted, right? The fact that we get to spend time with you on site for a day, that really appealed to me. I wanted to get to know you, wanted to see the property with you, learn a little bit. Um, your design, right, and what I've seen you do before really appealed to me as well. So the whole process was fairly seamless. Working with you was extremely easy. All of our calls seemed to go very well. You understood and you really kind of captured what we wanted to do. So from beginning to end, right, even to having lunch right together at my house after we finished the on site, really resonated with me. Right, I felt like we were getting your full attention, and I felt like you were very thorough and thoughtful in the process. So all of those kind of kind of resonated with me. Being from South Georgia, we want to know not just the business aspect, but who are you, Josh? Right? Like what where are you from? Like where have you been? Family, and we seem to hit it off, and all of those things kind of combined and came together to give me a real comfortable feeling with you and Whitetail Partners.
Right. And
It's probably more than you wanted. It's probably
yeah,
a lot
well,
more than
you
you
know what?
wanted, but yeah.
Hey,
So
I appreciate it. I'm very flattered. Yeah, no, it was a great experience, and I think that that does speak to the regional. We call it our regional expertise typically,
yep,
but really just coming all the way down to culturally. Like we just understand. I'm a guy in my upper 30s, nearly 40, with a young family, and from South Alabama. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So there's a lot of carryover. I'm from South Alabama. You're from South Georgia. Like it just, I mean, you're not terribly far from Alabama where you're at.
no,
So it's,
no,
you know, everything kind of wrapped up in that. Like we were speaking on the same wavelength.
yep,
Um,
absolutely.
so let's talk then about the results and the work so far.
Mhm.
So like you've done a good bit of work. You spent a lot of time out there. I've I've said I alluded to it earlier. I'm very surprised with the amount of work that you were able to do because when you said I have time constraints, I thought something different. I was like, oh, this guy, he's going to be out there 3 or 4 times a season or an off season tops. We've got to get all the work done in that 3 or 4 times. And so, but you've
Mhm.
been out there quite a few more times. So tell me about the work you've done so far and the results that I think you're already seeing.
Yeah, um, I mean, the biggest thing, right? We talked about this while we were on site, and it's not something that I even did. Right, we had a surveyor come out and survey that eastern line. Right, it'd been 17 years. Um, those lines kind of blur a little bit between landowners, right? And you were mentioning to me we need screening in here on this eastern side. It's like, well, I'm not really sure where the property line is. Let's get a survey, right? We did the survey. Turns out we had a couple rows, right, of cotton kind of on our side of the property. No big deal. We spoke with the landowner, and we'll rectify that after the season. But just knowing exactly where your property was, realizing that we had a driveway right on our side, right, of the property that we could access down in the extreme southeastern corner of the property, provide tremendous access. So just getting that survey alone and kind of level setting as to where our property boundary was gave us a clear path on how we could build on that eastern side of the property. Um, and then let's see, we've put out screening so far, right? We put out some Egyptian wheat along that eastern border, along the western border, around those food plots, and that seems to be doing really well. Something that I've learned, right, as far as doing stuff is you don't necessarily have to have all the equipment, but if you can find friends who you can borrow equipment from.
Right.
I have a big my credit is I've run up a big credit with them. I owe them a lot, I'm sure, but borrowing their tractor, harrying all the fire breaks, making sure we've got good access. We dissed up those two food plots. Um, we did that, I guess, back around the end of June. Cutting a few corridors in was a big task as well. And then two, it's just spending more time out there learning about the property, learning what's growing out there, right? Learning that we have beautyberry growing in the north. Let's try to transplant it down to some of these areas where we're going to have some water holes set up. Learning that I've got pokeberry over here. Let's see if we can transplant it. But then also preparing these food plots to start planting. I haven't made as much progress as I wanted the northern end of the property, but we're starting to get there on the southern end. We installed 4 ladder stands this past weekend, um, so we're looking to hopefully have some success with those. Still a lot more work, to do. Again, I think cutting in those corridors, if you look at that middle kind of bedding area, that fire break slash corridor was big. I'm excited to see what that does.
Hmm.
And then again, Josh, like I'm really excited about this year, but I'm also thinking about year 2 and 3 and 4
Right.
and the work I can do in the following spring. I'm already going ahead and lining some of that up. So when January, February hits, I'll have a game plan and can move forward
Right.
with
And
that work.
Unfortunately, when we had talked the first time, even though I think we talked the first time in 23, it was like
Hmm. Yeah.
December. Was it
Yep.
December?
Yep.
But I was
Yep.
already booked into April by December, and
Yep.
that's what I try to tell folks. Like, if you do want to have us out, like November by Thanksgiving, we're pretty booked out. And so the earliest
Hmm.
time frame that I had available was April, which would have been fine in North Georgia. It's
Hmm.
a little bit different in South Georgia. You didn't have the time after receiving the design to really be able to get after some of the work that would have been best
Hmm.
done in, say, late January, early February. So
Yep.
a lot of this, and I want to just tell folks, like this northern portion right here, um, it looks dense with trees, but I don't think we can describe adequately just how dense this is with, yes, a lot of oaks, but an understory of Chinese privet that is bonkers. I mean, you've got a lot of privet control to do, and that's an invasive species. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that we focus a lot on. We're not just hunting plans, but we're also habitat, and so we are concerned with getting rid of some of that, some of
Hmm.
that invasive species kind of stuff. And so you are going to do that, but staging things in the northern part of the property was a little lower priority for us than getting the southern part kind of dialed in.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. April, right? We were out there swatting mosquitoes, and I knew coming into May and June, trying to control that privet was probably just not something I could wrap my head around. And
Right.
so, next January, February, we'll probably get in there. And again, we're going to start just baby steps, trying to open up some of those oaks, right? Starting to practice some of the privet control. And we may, right? We've looked at forest mulchers to maybe come in and get them for a day to hit some different areas to speed up the process. But I think one of the biggest things I've learned is that it doesn't all have to be done in a day. It can be incremental. You can do little bitty hits, and like you encourage me, let's focus on, you break it down into the smaller area. Let's focus on areas where we can contain it, right? Little bitty areas that we want to knock out, and don't focus on the whole thing. And I think when I first got the plan back from you, although I loved reading everything, I was kind of scared to see like how much work I actually needed to do. So yeah, I talked with you. We had a follow up call, and we kind of compartmentalized it and broke it down into stages to take
Right.
off chunks that were manageable to me and fit into my schedule. So
Right.
yeah, we're next year we'll probably be focusing more on the northern end for sure.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a question that I have to run your way because I get this quite often, or I've seen this critique quite often. Um, hey man, I see mock scrapes on this plan. Mock scrapes don't work down south, right, Emerson?
They work for us, right? Like I was surprised how quickly they brought in deer, right? We now see activity up and down those mock scrapes. We don't have any on the southern end yet, right? The
Right.
the water holes, that's a project for next year. I really I I can handle a shovel, but I'm not going to put into 100-gallon tanks. I'm going to try to get a little mini excavator to do that.
Do not do
Well,
it
so
by
we have
hand. Do not
yeah, we
do it
have
by
yeah. So I have a mini excavator lined up, I think. So we'll try to get that set up in January or February. It will work on the mock scrapes there on those, but we have a few on the north end. Part of it was practice for me, right? A lot of this is practice and not being scared to go out and trying to do something.
And we're
So
talking your
set up
first mock scrapes ever.
yeah, first mock
You-
scrapes.
You've never done this before.
Never done this before. Um, Found some grapevine, went out there, strung it up, with a rake and the get in the scrape. But yeah, I believe we've set up just a couple of them, and they had activity kind of like that. So it was impressive. Yeah, they do work down here,
Yeah.
right? And it take it from me, somebody who just set up their first one, right? Didn't really know what they were doing. I somehow stumbled into it and got them to start using those scrapes. So I was satisfied. I was very
Right.
satisfied.
One thing you also did though, you found areas where deer frequent. You're
Mhm.
putting them in places that deer should
Yep.
already be. You're not putting them out in the middle of the woods and like hoping a deer comes by it at some point. You're putting them right in the way where if a buck's
Hmm.
coming through there, he's got to move his head around, he's got to move his head if he doesn't want to hit it.
He's going to hit his head. Yep, exactly. And I don't think I've mentioned this, but talking with you in December, and then about how important it would be, even if I'm not with you on site till April, get out there and do some postseason scouting, right? So start to figure out where these deer are traveling, right? And it's pretty obvious kind of where they were traveling through that northern portion. So we just set up a few scrapes kind of right on those travel corridors, and it seemed to
Right.
work out well. We got good results so far.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I'm curious, what's the total acreage here? Is it 40
We're 40 acres. Yep.
total?
Yep.
Okay. So, from what you have done and learned so far through your process, I'm trying to close out. We've had a couple of different clients on at this point, and I want to close it out with
Mhm.
this. What advice would you give to the guy who's got 40 acres in the South, trying to manage it for whitetails? What have you learned that you think is a good piece of advice for that guy?
Have a plan. Have a plan and stick to it. Right. That's one of the main reasons we got y'all. Right. I can go and try to get all this stuff online and piecemeal stuff together. But I think I should do this. I think I should do that. But if you don't have a plan to tie it all together, I don't think you're doing yourself any service. Right. So having you come in, right, and help me formalize that plan and figure out and visualize it. This is what we want to do, just helped me tremendously. Set me forward so many years, right? I could have gone out there and tried to do this myself, but I don't. It would not be as well guided. And so I'm looking forward to coming back with you next year and revisiting this and tweaking it and figuring out kind of what went right, maybe what we need to adjust. But having this plan to kind of guide you through the process. One, if you want to do it, you may get overwhelmed like I did. Having this plan that you can refer back to helps you compartmentalize it and say, I go back to this plan all the time, and I checked, I did this, the date I did it, right? Maybe take a few pictures. It helps me realize that I have done this work and it's not insurmountable, right? You just got to be willing to stick to the plan. But yeah, that would be my biggest point of advice.
Okay.
Get a plan, right?
Yeah,
And stick to that plan. It'll make you
that's
so
good.
much more efficient and use your time so much more valuably.
That's good. And I think that works even if you haven't used a consultant, right? Like, even
Hmm.
if you're designing your own plan, that's fine. Just have your plan though.
Yep.
Don't throw spaghetti at the wall continuously and hoping to see what sticks. Come up with a plan that's best for your habitat, that's best for your hunting style, and that fits you and fits the land, fits the property, fits your goals, and then
Hmm.
chip away, chip away, chip away. I go to a lot of places where I see, okay, hey, we began doing some stuff over here, and then we kind of abandoned that. But then we had a buck down here, so we moved down here that year, and we really
Yeah.
focused here. And then the next year here there was a buck over here, so we really focused there. And it's just nothing ever gets completed. It's kind of like a house where you're trying to do some remodeling, but you never finish one project before you move on to the next. And we
Yep.
see that quite a bit with client properties because it is so much work to be done.
Hmm.
But yeah, get a plan, even if it's one that you wrote yourself, and stick to it.
Exactly. Exactly. That's part, seeing how I can fulfill that plan, right? It's not just thinking about, the upcoming deer season. It's thinking about year round, right? I can do this now. I can do this now. I can do this now. And I don't know, it gives you something to kind of build towards. So I've thoroughly enjoyed the process of working with y'all and putting this plan and trying to carry out on the plan. So
Yeah.
it's been a great experience for me. Great
Well,
learning experience. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
you've done a tremendous job. You got the plan. You got right after it. You've been doing great work. I think you've struck a really good balance. I think you've probably worked out there more than you thought you would.
Hmm.
But I think you have learned a ton more. I did not know that one of my clients would be beginning his own native nursery for native plant species.
Yeah, I was like, I was out there looking at all these plants you had suggested, all this elderberry or pokeberry, beautyberry, like it's growing out there right now,
Hmm.
right? It's just a matter, and can we transplant some of it, right?
Yep.
And move it to where we kind of want it to go, right? So it just again, like, and I believe I called a local nursery looking for some of that stuff, and they were like, "Well, those are weeds. Right? Why do you want those? Right? You need to come out to my house and get rid of those." Right. So it's yeah, not thinking about them as weeds, but thinking about them as food, like really again resonated with me. And I've enjoyed that process of identifying what could be food and then maybe figuring out how to transplant it or move it or grow more of it, right? And
Yeah.
move it out there. So that
Yeah.
aspect of me has really been fun for
Well,
sure.
I'm excited to see Emerson's native nurseries. opening
Yeah,
up.
right. Open for business, fall of 2025.
That's
So,
right. That's right. So, well, all right. Last question that I've got for you here. Like,
yep.
uh, what's next, and what are your expectations for the upcoming deer season? What's next? I guess on the priority list for you.
Mhm.
But then, how do you foresee this fall going?
Yeah, so up next for me, right, I really want to focus on those food plots. We will start to get our seed together. I've got to go back out there and mow and possibly put out some herbicide on those food plots just to kind of get all that down again. I don't have a I'm not going to be able to disc, right? So trying to figure out how we can get those food plots planted. That's kind of on my next priority list. And then expectations. Like I thought about this question. It's like I I don't really have. I'm not looking to go out there and kill or X amount of deer or this certain type of deer. I just want to go out there and hunt more strategically and go out there with a plan, and think about, you know, literally learn again from this year about what I can maybe do for next year. I want to get my boys out there, right? And hopefully we
Mhm.
could, we could see a deer and possibly take a deer. But my expectations are not, not through the roof. I understand there's probably a lot of work to do. But again, my just to get out there, have a good time, good opportunities, and make the most of it, and then start thinking about what we want to do next year to make it even better, right? So I don't know. I don't have like one expectation. It's just hoping again that I can be a little more strategic about it, learn, and then again keep capitalizing and make these years better and better and better. And hopefully we can send you some pictures if we do get lucky this year.
I'm looking forward to that. I think you probably are going to find yourself getting a shot. So, which tree stands did you put up? So you said you've put up 4,
Yeah, we put up T7. Um, that was a high priority one for us.
right?
We didn't put up T6 just because we don't have that water hole in. We don't have any of the trees or bushes yet, so we passed on that one for this year.
Right.
We're going to be putting in both blinds, right? B1 and B2. Uh, we also put up um, T2, T3, and T5.
Oh, wow.
Right,
Okay.
those are the ones we put up. Yep.
You guys have
Um,
made some progress. That's excellent.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
excellent.
we have, and I'm hoping that they are productive. And I'm just like I said, we're not going to be going just to sit in the middle of the property any longer. We're going to be going on these edges, behind our access with hopefully a different strategy, and hopefully it'll pay off
Right.
this year for sure.
Right. I feel like I need to point out, we don't get a lot of northwest winds. Where you're at, we get a lot
Mhm,
of east, northeast kind of winds. And so if somebody says, "Wait a second, he just set up a lot of easterly wind." Yeah, we did. That's
mhm,
perfect. That's exactly what we want here because we're not going to get that northwest cold front. We're going to get a northeasterly
mhm.
kind of cold front
Yep,
blowing through. So set up very, very well for that.
yep, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
awesome. Well, Emerson, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you as a client and your business and your interest um, in implementing this plan. It's been a joy to get to, um, you know, be available, answer phone calls, answer text messages, emails, hop on calls like this. It's just been great to hear about all the work that you've been doing. I love seeing clients take what we give them and run with it, and you're a great example of that. So,
Absolutely.
thanks for your love for this stuff, man. And I look forward to seeing how your property develops over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for all your help. Thank you for your willingness to take my random weird text questions and get back to me so quickly. It was like I said, it was a great learning experience. I appreciate it. And it was yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yep, absolutely.